All right, we are live. We're going to do a live Q&A session for practical defense training. It's going to focus heavily on New Mexico concealed carry. We're going to talk about justifiable use of deadly force as it relates to property and self-defense and some other things. So any questions that y'all might have below, feel free to join us over on Facebook and get those questions going. That way we can be sure to answer them for y'all. Let me just make sure I got all my tabs muted correctly. If you guys have not subscribed to the After Action Project, please do so through your favorite podcast player. We are doing a giveaway every month for our listeners over there on that podcast. If you go to afteractionproject.com/giveaway, you can find out more about it there. We're doing a pretty cool Southwest Gunsmith Technologies, which is a local company local to New Mexico. They're doing a $300 gift certificate giveaway that you can use to Cerakote or is it stipling or stippling? How do you pronounce that word, man?
Stippling.
Yeah. Cool. I'll only mess that up forever and ever from now on. So Andy, what have you been up to in the world of training? I'm going to check the audio over here real quick. So while I'm doing that, why don't you tell everybody what you've been up to?
I haven't been doing a lot of training. We had a nice little range day here this last weekend. Previous to that, I spent a week out hunting. Got me a nice little small 4-key deer, but it was enough to put some meat in the freezer. Prior to that, we did a class up in Colorado Springs, which was interesting. And since then, I have not done much training, unfortunately, and I need to really get my butt out there and get going. As far as in-home training, constantly, as we talk about this often, this is pretty much my life with the exception of my family and my regular job. I'm always on YouTube or watching videos or trying to do something gun-wise just to continue my education, and that's kind of my goal. If I can't be out on the range, I want to at least be learning in my head. What about you?
Constantly, other than resolving that minor audio issue that we had over on Facebook, man, I've been trying to figure out technology and all things live streaming. So we're streaming to YouTube and then to Facebook, and then from Facebook, have we shared this out to the ABQ Metro Crime Watch page? Or that
on that one right now.
Okay, cool. So this is per request for one of the local Crime Watch pages here in New Mexico, Albuquerque specifically. We're going to go live into that group and take some of their questions and comments and all that good stuff. Last month we were up in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We took a couple courses up there, a vehicle counter ambush, anti-carjacking or carjack defense course, as well as defensive pistol 1. So we got learned some cool stuff there. Got to hang out with some cool people, which was awesome. That's probably one of the favorite part about it. And then we're just getting back here and getting busy with everything that we have planned coming up and what we want to get done in the rest of 2018 and 2019. So there's going to be a bunch of some good changes coming to practical defense training and New Mexico. So make sure you guys are staying up to date with us. Anti-carjacking or carjacking. Okay, cool. So let's see what we have going here. We have Dalton over on the Practical Defense page. What's up, buddy? Thanks for jumping on. Harold, thank you as well for jumping on. If you guys have any questions for us, feel free to get them going down there in the comment section. We're talking about concealed carry, self-defense, firearms training, self-defense training, justifiable use of deadly force as it pertains to New Mexico, and anything else that you guys want to talk about. If you want to talk about what it's like being a ginger, we can get into that as well. But I don't think you guys want to see ginger tears tonight, so maybe not. Cool. So if you are over on YouTube, feel free to get those. You can leave comments in that section. We'll get to it as well. But we'll primarily be taking questions from the Practical Defense page or the Albuquerque Metro Crime Watch page. Andy, are we live there?
We are now. I'm just editing the post, and we should be good to go. I'm looking for anybody that's got any questions there.
Cool. Hey, Dalton or Harold, do you guys have any questions that you want to start off with? I know we've seen some things that we're going to discuss here. I guess before we do that, let's big thing here in Albuquerque. Albuquerque, the magazine, Best of the City, 2018. Practical defense training. Did we win? We were nominated. We are top 5 Best of the City for 2018, which is it's humbling. You know, that's something that I'm proud of, but it's also something that I kind of want to, you know, Andy and I do. I think we do a pretty good job tempering one another with making sure that we really process what that means. And I don't want to trash the voting process or, you know, Albuquerque, the city, the magazine, but it's essentially little more than a popularity contest. There's no real objective standards for that. People that voted for us, we absolutely appreciate you voting for us and your support there, because it does mean, to me, it means that we're out there providing value, right? Because it's not just going to be our students that vote for us that gets us into the top 5 or the top spot next year. It's going to be all the other people that we interact with through Facebook, social media, and then our day-to-day lives, where it's going to let them, you know, when they're thinking about who the best courses are for gun owners, that they want to vote for practical defense training. But for us as an instructor, I know for me, especially for me, it's one of the things that I always look at is what other courses have people taken. Right. And when Andy started working, when Andy and I partnered up with practical defense training a couple years ago now, one of the things I told Andy and I tell other new instructors is it is the easiest thing for the concealed carry instructor to get great reviews and great testimonials from their students, because oftentimes it is the first and only formal firearms training that a student receives. And that's not saying anything about the student. That's just the nature of the beast. Right. It's very difficult to get a bad review from the concealed carry student. Now, if it's a concealed carry student that, you know, in the state of New Mexico, if you've let your concealed carry license lapse for more than 60 days, you know, where that person has taken other firearms training courses, or like Andy's case, when he took was it the Utah concealed carry license that you took, or the Arizona concealed carry course?
It was in Arizona. I lived there for about 14 years, and yeah, it was much different than what we have here in New Mexico. Of course, some of you guys that have concealed carry permits probably already know, and if you don't, we're a state minimum required 15 hours here, and it was much easier and much less in Arizona, and now they have the constitutional carry too. So, yeah, it was much less compared to what we have to do here in New Mexico.
So when we get those students, I like to pick the brain. I like to pull them aside and say, hey, how did it compare? You know what I mean? What can we do differently? What can we do better? What did you like about that class? What can I do differently? What can we do differently now? You know, and somebody commented on one of our posts, and it says, you know, who voted you the best? And I took offense to it. I was like, well, first of all, I didn't say we were the best. I said that we were voted best of the city, top 5 best of the city. I said it was one of the most comprehensive and the most fun concealed carry courses in the state of New Mexico. And those are statements that I stand behind. And it came up before when we had a former student say that, you know, hey, you're the best instructor. And I said, you know, I really do appreciate that, but not for every student, right? I understand that there are students that would be better served if they went and took a different concealed carry course. I think for your new shooter or your intermediate shooter, somebody that is newer to the firearms, or they've owned a gun their entire life and they really want to spend some time getting that knowledge and the information to legally and responsibly carry a concealed handgun in the state of New Mexico, I think that those students are where we are the best instructors, or some of the best instructors for those students. If you're somebody with a bunch of experience and you want to spend 8 hours on the range and you really want to you really want to do 8 hours of on the range firearms training, and you want more of a tactical approach to that time on the range, there are better instructors out there, right? And for me, for getting this, you know, I had a conversation. If you look through here, in each category, there are some people where you're like, really? Like that's not the case. I know they're not, you know what I mean? You know, so there are some people that didn't make top 5, didn't make best of the city, that I would consider are, you know what I mean, right there with us. In some regards, for some students, I would recommend some students go out and train with them. But it is a cool thing. You know what I mean? I am honored and humbled that we earn that again. But I just want people, I don't want anybody, this long tirade is to, hey, if you're choosing your firearms trainer based on this, you're doing it wrong. Do not train with us because we were top 5 best of the city. Okay. Right. Train with us because you look at what we do and the information that we put out there, and you feel, and you're confident that we have the responsible mindset where our students are going to leave our class better informed, and they're really going to have the mindset that they need to have to legally and responsibly carry a firearm, and that they're really going to get that information, that they're going to understand what they need to do and what they shouldn't do. Okay, don't train with us because we got top 5 best of the city.
Yeah, to jump onto that too, I think the biggest part, what Jeremy's trying to say here too, is with the top 5, we're very humbled. We appreciate it from all of the people that have voted us. Please do it every year. Thank you very much for that. And what Jeremy's trying to say is, I challenge even all of our own students, go out and train with other people. The problem with concealed carry per se is there's shooters, like Jeremy said, that are very experienced. There's some that have never even picked up a gun in their life, and they go to these courses and they say, man, this is the best course I've ever had. But what do you compare it to? If you've never taken any other kind of firearms training, what do you compare it to? So I challenge you guys that go out and shoot, that you have concealed carry permits, you want to start learning how to protect yourself and protect your loved ones, go out and train with multiple instructors. Vet your instructors. Look at the reviews on Facebook. Look at their reviews on Google. Things that are not changeable, to where you can really see, get your opinion. And I totally agree with Jeremy here. If look at everything as one, don't just look at a magazine and say, oh, well, they're top 5. These are the guys we're going to go to. And vet your instructors. And then when you take that course, go find another course somewhere else and determine what's right and what's wrong, and really do some research, because we're talking about carrying a firearm. We're talking about self-defense, protecting our loved ones, protecting our life. The gun myth comment comes into play often. Well, you drive every day and you have a driver's license, you should have to go get a license and training for guns. I don't agree with that. We don't have to go down that road. But the reality is, we drive every day. And what are we doing while we're driving? We're practicing. That's something that could save our life or take our life, depending on how you drive. And we all think we're great drivers. Think about carrying a firearm and actually having to use it in self-defense. That small little chance that you're ever going to need it, you should be proficient with it. Anybody can shoot a gun. Anybody can pull the trigger. But do you know the laws involved? Do you know the technicalities involved? Can you hit targets under stress, under adrenaline rush? All those little details are what's important. So that's moving on to why we're here tonight. We want to make sure that you guys understand some of the details with concealed carry and protecting yourself with firearms. There's people out there that choose not to carry a firearm. You know what? Kudos to them. I am all for it. If you do not feel like you are comfortable carrying a firearm, awesome. Just don't tell me I can't. That's the whole key. Don't tell somebody else they can't. But if you do and you decide to choose that, understand the responsibilities beyond just carrying a gun. It's not a magic wand that's going to be on your hip or on your person that's going to automatically save your life. It may save your life, but your decisions also may end you up in jail. And that's, for Jeremy and I, that's the most important part, that we do not want to see our fellow gun owners, our fellow citizens who are trying to do the law correctly and at the same time protect themselves, go to jail and sit with the very same people that we are sick and tired of with the crime that we have in Albuquerque. So moving into it, Jeremy, I'd like you to start explaining about defensive property. This is one comment that comes up very often. And if I had hair, I'd pull my hair out, because we often see people saying, you know what, man, the next time I find somebody breaking into my car, I'm going to shoot them. Or how come you guys didn't dump lead into this guy? And first of all, I want to say, look, I've had a lot of things stolen in my life. Before I knew what I didn't know, or what I know now, I've had guns stolen. I've had 2 vehicles stolen, rims stolen, car stereos, You name it. I've had crap stolen from me, and criminals drive me insane. You know, I hate them just like the next person. But at the same time, I don't want to be a criminal sitting in that cell with one of them either. And that's what's important to us. So, Jeremy, talk a little bit about defensive property for us.
Absolutely. Before we do that, I want we have some comments in there, questions in there. Dalton, we'll definitely touch on that in just a second. Dalton is asking if we recommend where folks should carry based on body type. Tim K wants to know, Tim KR, we have two Tim Ks in the comment section right now. I don't want to butcher your last name. Wants to know if we can talk about concealed carry in New Mexico and places that serve alcohol. Yeah, we're going to spend a good bit of time on that because it's the easiest way for a responsibly armed citizen to unknowingly commit a 4th-degree felony. And if you're convicted of a felon, or if you're convicted of a felony, you can't own guns, you can't get a concealed carry license, you can't vote. And then if you do decide that you're going to carry a firearm as a convicted felon, well, then you're a felon in possession of a firearm. And that's a little bit more serious than a little 4th-degree felony. And, you know, we're not going to talk about, you know, will it get pled down, this, that, or the other. We're going to tell you what the law says. This isn't legal advice. We're not telling you how to live your life. All right, this is legal advice, or this is legal information that you can find online. And in fact, we're going to tell you where you can find it. It's pretty simple with Google. It amazes us that there's so much misinformation out there surrounding some of these things. Scott is in this section, or in the comment section. Scott is one of our instructors. We have the best instructor cadre, I think, in New Mexico. We have some of the best instructors in New Mexico. You know, Scott's one of those folks. His stuff on ballistics and everything else, when I'm sitting there in that class, I'm like, holy cow, man! I learn something new every time with him. And you know, I take that class. I teach that class with him every month. Nate shouts out my patch collection. That's not all of them, but there are some of my favorite patches up there. Tim said Andy is pro-choice on guns. George, how's it going, buddy? I hope business is doing well for you. Dalton said he has to hop off. Okay, catch the replay on it, Dalton, because I do want to talk about. Tim Knight says, say it slowly. I do want to talk about, you know, the justifiable use of deadly force as it is related to the defense of property. In the state of New Mexico, if you look at the statute on justifiable homicide, it reads something to the effect that deadly force is justified in defense of his life, his wife, or his property. And then it goes on to list a couple other things on there. And if you read that statute, you might believe that you can shoot somebody if they're breaking into your truck or your car, or that you can shoot somebody if they are stealing something out of your front yard or the shed in your backyard. The statutes are not the only place where we get our laws from. We have to look at legal precedent, and then we have to look at the jury instructions. Okay. So it's not just what does the statute say. And then we also want to temper this by saying, just because something is justified on paper doesn't mean that the cops are going to see it that way. It doesn't mean that the DA is going to see it that way. And if it goes to the jury trial, it doesn't mean that the jury is going to see it that way. Okay. There are people in jail, in prison right now, that had they not used deadly force to defend themselves or a loved one, they would have died. Okay. And on paper, it was a justifiable shooting. It was a justifiable use of deadly force. But there are still people that are going to decide whether or not your actions were justified under the word of the law. And what that means is it's not just a series of check boxes that you're going to go through and check. Okay, that's the on paper stuff. You're still going to have the men and women on the jury that are going to decide if the evidence that was presented in favor of your claim of self-defense is true under the circumstances. Okay, so just because we say we're talking about something being justified on paper, it doesn't mean that the police are going to see it that way, the DA or the jury is going to see it that way. There's still a legal process that you're going to have to go through. Okay, and just because I also want to talk about some recent, there have been recent cases where a good guy with a gun shot a bad guy with a gun and didn't face any criminal prosecution. Just because somebody else doesn't face prosecution for their actions and for how they use deadly force and under the circumstances that they use deadly force, it doesn't mean that you, in those same shoes, under the same circumstances, use the same level of deadly force with the same outcome for the bad guy. It doesn't mean that your case would be interpreted the same way or handled the same way. Just because something doesn't go to trial doesn't mean it was a justified shooting, okay? And we'll probably do a follow-up session on this, or Andy and I will get some videos going where we can pull out those cases directly and cite them for you. It's not a topic that I planned on going into tonight, and it didn't just hit me to the counterpoint that, hey, just because it's justified on paper doesn't mean that it's going to be seen that way in the court of law. Just like
there's too many variables is really what it comes down to. Because again, a lot of this, the whole reason why we're doing this is because of a lot of the arguments and the things we see on social media. And that's exactly one of them, as Jeremy said. You know, somebody says, well, I know somebody that's done this and shot somebody for defending their property and they didn't go to jail, so why should I? Well, for me, when it's my life, and it's, you know, if you got to think about your life in general, it's not just me. It's my wife, it's my kids, it's my mother and father, my senior parents that need me. There's a lot of people that need me in this world. So it goes beyond just my life. And there's too many variables for me to want to decide to take somebody's life or lose my life over something that is inanimate, right? So that's the important part about it. Is it worth it? Is it worth going to court over? Is it worth spending minimum $50,000 to go to court and fight a court case because you decided to make these decisions? That's the reality. Is it worth it? And that's what we've got to really think about. Really quick, something as Jeremy covered. Look, not legal advice. We're just giving you legal information. The key is we're all adults here. You're going to make the decisions you want to make. Whether you listen to us or not, that's your choice. But Jeremy and I, our goal is to try to give you all the information that you need. That way you can make a logical choice on your own. And that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah, so I tell our students that if you're not willing to die for something, don't put yourself in a position where you might have to kill for it, okay? Because if it's a legitimate deadly force encounter where you would be justified in using deadly force, your life is on the line by the very nature of your statement, right? If you're not under the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, then deadly force is not justified. Right? So if you are under the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, that means your life is in danger, right? Here and now, right now, your life is in danger. That means your life could very likely end, okay? And then it's your freedom, right? Because on the other side of that physical altercation, it's going to be your freedom that is now on the line. And if you're not willing to die for something, don't put yourself in a position where you might have to kill for it. So when we're talking about the justifiable use of deadly force, I want to pull up this statute for you folks. What the easiest way to do this is you just Google search NM statutes, right? And that'll pull up the New Mexico public access law. And this will give you kind of the statutes as they're written. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to type in justifiable homicide. I think that's the search term that we typically use. Defense of habitation. Okay. Actually, yeah, defense of habitation. So in the statute, it says that in defense of his life, his property, or his wife, his property. However, New Mexico courts have held that deadly force is never justified in defense of property unless there is an added element of the threat of death or great bodily harm. Okay, so if your truck is getting broken into at 4:30 in the morning, a week before Christmas, like mine was last year, deadly force is not justified in defense of that truck unless there's an added element of the threat of death or great bodily harm. So what that means is that 4:30 in the morning, I go out there with my M&P 9C on my hip. I say, hey, what are you doing? Right? And that person who's breaking into my truck decides that they're going to pull out a gun or a knife and attack me. And then I use deadly force. At that moment, I am not defending my truck, my property, against that threat. I'm defending my life. Okay. So the New Mexico courts have, the pure defense of property, not including a defense against force and violence, is always limited to reasonable force under the law, under the circumstances. And that was decided in State versus Wagoner. In Brown versus Martinez, the court held that to resort to the use of a firearm to prevent a mere trespass or an unlawful act not amounting to a felony was unreasonable as a matter of law. Okay, so in defense of property, to brandish your firearm, right, for anything less than a felony is unreasonable as a matter of law, and therefore Unlawful. So let's take that situation where my truck was getting broken into at 4:30 in the morning. And then, I got some comments from some folks. They said, man, whoever did that was lucky that you weren't awake at that time. And I said, my response was, the only difference had I been awake at that time was the cops would have been notified sooner, and I probably would have pushed my little alarm on my key fob. That's it. I'm not going out there. There's nothing in my truck that I'm willing to die for. So there's nothing in my truck that I'm willing to put myself in a situation where I might have to kill somebody for it. Okay. And we saw this in Albuquerque a couple of years ago, where somebody was breaking into a guy's truck. He went out there early hours of the morning. He confronted the people that were breaking into his truck, and then one of the burglars pulled out a gun and shot him and killed him.
Teenager.
It was a teenager, right? I believe the kid was like 15 or 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not mentioning that to say that person did anything wrong, because up until that point, if you would have asked somebody like, hey, what's the reasonable outcome of interrupting somebody breaking into your truck at 2 o'clock in the morning, like a 15-year-old kid, they'd say, oh no, the kid's going to get on his bicycle and run away. But that's not the case, man. If you look at the crime in Albuquerque right now, a lot of these people, a lot of these folks that are committing violent crimes are kids. They're younger than Trayvon Martin. And look at how that worked out, right? They're children. They're 13 and 14 and 15-year-old kids running around with guns, robbing people, robbing other violent criminals, right? It was a 15-year-old kid that was breaking into this guy's truck. So if you're not willing to die for something, don't put yourself in a position where you might have to kill for it, because it's going to be your life and your freedom on the line. Now, if you turn that around and you look at some of the way that when my truck was getting broken into, some of the different outcomes that could have happened. 4:30 in the morning, I go out there, I confront them, right? And if it's that 15-year-old kid, right, he pulls out a flashlight, points it at me, right? At 4:30 in the morning, he points this thing at me, right? Because he's going to try to intimidate me to give himself a couple of seconds. So I think it's a gun. I pull out my gun, I shoot, I kill him. On paper, that's a justified shooting, right? Because the apparent threat need not be real. It only need to appear real under the circumstances. Under the circumstances, a reasonable person would perceive that to be a weapon, right? Turns out it was a flashlight. Police show up. I just shot an unarmed 15-year-old kid that was breaking into my truck at 4:30 in the morning. How's that going to work out for me? It's probably going to cost me a whole lot more in legal and emotional toll than letting them steal my first aid kit and prescription sunglasses out of there. So when we're talking about defensive property, man, if I just want to drive this home, and then I know you have some input on it. If your life isn't under the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, it doesn't matter what is going on. You're not justified in using deadly force. So, sorry, Andy, I cut you off there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I talked about it briefly, and Jeremy touched on it again with the emotional aspect of it. Yeah, we're just talking purely about the legal aspects of how much money it's going to cost, time, your job loss, and all that. But I touched on it earlier. Think about your family. Think about the stress that it's going to put on your wife or your children or your parents or whoever your loved one may be, husband, whoever it may be. There's some mental stress there. Look, I was involved in a road rage incident back in 2011. I saw a 15-year-old boy die about 10 to 15 feet from me. I can tell that story, and I tell that story in our concealed carry class like it happened yesterday. Those things don't leave. They don't just, oh, I shot this guy. Yay for me. Look, I'm the winner. Those things live with you for the rest of your life. It's a mental deal. And it's something that you got to really consider as well. I mean, is that something you want to do? Do you want to end a 14-year-old's life because he decided to break into your truck? For some of you guys out there, the answer might be a simple yes. But don't tell it to me. Don't tell it to Facebook. Right before you go to bed, think about somebody that you love, a cousin, a son, whatever of yours, who has chosen to go down the wrong path of drugs or alcohol, or just because somebody dared him to. Somebody you truly love loses their life over breaking into a vehicle, and think how you would feel if you were in that situation. Understand, look, we're gun owners. We teach this stuff every day. And by no means are we trying to say, don't defend yourself. Don't defend your loved ones, or don't put yourself in situations that we shouldn't have. We've got to be responsible. That's the whole key. You know, there's people out there, and it's a very big, strong push in this world right now, or in the United States, to take guns away from law-abiding citizens and take guns away from this and that and make it difficult for us. And for us gun owners, we've also got to be responsible as well too. We've got to be, we can't be the crazy gun nuts that they want us to think, they think that we are, right? We have to have that level of responsibility. But Jeremy, moving on in beyond the protecting of property of like your vehicle, let's talk about what happens if you're at home middle of the night and someone breaks into your house and maybe they don't have a weapon. Can you defend yourself? What does that look like?
Well, I'll tell you, if you shoot them in your front yard, you just drag them inside your house and plant a gun on them, right?
Right.
That's the worst advice that somehow is still perpetuated in the year 2018.
Yeah.
So New Mexico is we're not a stand your ground state, and we're not a castle doctrine state. However, we do have verbiage in our jury instructions that lend themselves to that, the mantra and the idea of a castle doctrine state. So, when we're talking about you must be under the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm inside of your home, the jury instructions read, the committee commentary on the jury instruction reads that in defense of habitation, although the defendant is limited by the elements of imminent threat, apparent necessity, and reasonableness, he does not have to fear for the life of himself or others, or necessarily believe that great bodily harm will come to himself or others. An apparent necessity to kill to prevent a felony is sufficient. Okay, so basically that's giving you a legal presumption that that bad guy was in your house to do harm. Okay, so we're not a castle doctrine state. The castle doctrine verbiage is typically inside your home, you need not retreat. Okay, so there's no duty. New Mexico doesn't have a duty to retreat inside of your home. It's just giving us a little legal lenience on the fear part, right? Because when we go in and we look at self-defense, justifiable homicide, defense of yourself, there's some verbiage in there in the committee commentary that could be alarming if left open to interpretation without putting some constraints on it. But generally that says that you must be in fact be in fear for your life, and you must act only upon that fear. So in defense of habitation, what New Mexico is saying here in the committee commentary is that you don't have to actually be in fear for your life, right? It's saying in defense of your habitation, you do not have to fear for the life of yourself or others, or necessarily believe that great bodily harm will come to yourself or others. An apparent necessity to kill to prevent a felony is sufficient. Okay, so that's the legal lenience that is granted to you inside of your home. It doesn't mean, if I'm over at Andy's house, Andy invited me over to his house for, a New Year's Eve party, and I get out of hand and I had a few beers, right? And Andy and I get into a verbal altercation. It doesn't mean Andy could shoot me without any provocation, right? It doesn't mean that Andy could pull out his gun, shoot me, and says, nope, he wasn't here. I didn't invite him. He wasn't a guest in my house, right? You still have to be, you're still limited by the elements of imminent threat, apparent necessity, and reasonableness. Okay, it's not a free for all inside of your house. It's not a free for all inside of your front yard. You are granted some legal leniencies there because typically, and that's the courts will hold that somebody unlawfully inside of your house is likely there to do you harm, but that can be proven otherwise, right? They can say no, you know what I mean, like. No, that person wasn't inside of your house to do you harm. That person was inside of your house because they were your son's friend, right? Or it was your husband's mistress, right? Doesn't mean that inside of your home you get to shoot whoever the heck you want that doesn't live there, right?
Yeah, let's talk about the morals part of it too. So one other thing that we highly recommend, if you're actually anybody really, have a flashlight by your bed. Have a flashlight. Know where there's a few flashlights. Here, you hear them on the news on occasion, but one is always stuck out in my head. A guy wakes up, hears a rustling in his house. He goes around, grabs his firearm, goes outside, turns the corner, sees somebody crawling in one of his windows, and he shoots the guy 5 times. Guess who it was? It was the 15-year-old daughter's boyfriend. Now, that being said, if I found one of these guys breaking into my house to get to my daughter, I'd be a little upset too, but not to the point to where I'd want to end his life. So we've got to make sure that we know who our target is, and it's actually somebody that we want to defend our life with. You know, it could be a neighbor. Housing tracts are very popular these days, and all the houses look the same. All it would take is one person to think that they lock themselves out. They bust open the door. We run out there and we shoot them. Oh crap! It's Sam, the neighbor, drunk again, fighting with the wife. Right. Uh, Another thing that we don't want to do going into that emotional deal. Moving on to the next one, Jeremy. Another common one that I see is people driving their vehicles. I hear it a lot. A vehicle's an extension of your home, and I have the same rights in my vehicle due to this law than I do in my house. So let's cover that a little bit.
Yeah. So inside of your vehicle, you can obviously just commit drive-bys because it's an extension of your home. So the extension of your home piece of it is that's going to be a protection against the government from unreasonable search and seizure. Right. It isn't granted, you know, when we're talking about the single legal lenience that the committee commentary has given us through the defense of habitation jury instructions and committee commentary, where you don't have to be under the fear for your life, right? You don't have to actually be under the imminent threat or believe that you're under the imminent threat. Inside of your vehicle, that's still true, right? And it's probably going to hold a little bit more true because the prosecution can say that guy was outside of your car, your window was rolled up, all he had was a knife. You know what I mean? Like, why did you need to do that? So it's not, your vehicle is not, the defense of habitation is limited to your habitation, where you call your home. Now, if it's a motorhome, an RV, then that's going to obviously be a different story. But in my truck, I'm not granted that same legal lenience. Okay. Typically, the crimes that you would face inside of your vehicle, however, are going to be violent crimes that rise to the level where you're probably under the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. Somebody drives up or walks up to your vehicle, sticks a gun in your face, right? Like, you're at that point, you're not defending your vehicle. You're defending yourself inside of your vehicle. One comment on Andy's last thing about inside of your home and knowing what your target is. You know, the firearm safety rule is know what your target is, know what's in front of it, and what's beyond it. Inside of your home, that's it's critical that you know what that is. Drywall does not stop ammunition. If it did, instead of buying $200 AR-500 steel targets, you would just go down to the local Home Depot and pick up some sheets of drywall, and that would be your target. Okay, that's not what it is. Drywall sheets do not stop handgun ammunition. They don't stop rifle ammunition. So you have to know what your target is, what's in front of it, what's beyond it. The last thing you want to do is shoot at a bad guy, dump a few rounds in the direction of your bad guy, and then realize that on the other side of that bad guy was your child's room, or on the other side of that wall was your neighbor's house, and on the other side of that wall was their room. You also don't want to go downstairs when you hear that bump in the night, see a shadowy figure in your kitchen, and then just put 2 or 3 rounds into that person, flip on the lights, and realize that it was your significant other or your child, a cousin or neighbor, somebody that was inside of your home that either had reason to be there or was unknowingly there and mistakenly there, you know, the drunk neighbor. If you're not aware of how often that happens, just follow any anti-gun group on any social media platform, and you'll see that it happens way too often. It happens at least once or twice a year, where it makes the news, the headlines, where the husband goes into the kitchen in the middle of the night, sees a shadowy figure, and he ends up shooting his wife. I believe there was an incident where it was either an off-duty officer or former law enforcement officer heard the door from the garage open, retrieved his firearm, and then, without identifying that target, shot his daughter, who had come back into town to surprise them. So you have to identify what your target is. Okay. People talk about, you know, can I shoot somebody through my door? Somebody's banging on my front door. Can I shoot somebody through my door? There might be a situation where that's justified and reasonable. Most likely not, though. You don't know what that target is on the other side of that door. A few years ago, there was a case where there was a stranded motorist looking for help, was frantically banging on a door, and was shot on the porch. It was an older college student. that didn't need to be shot, right? They were there to cause no harm. Just because you can do something, just because something would be justified on paper, doesn't mean that you should do it. Andy, let's talk about the other big one that we get here in New Mexico. And to Tim's question, licensed liquor establishments, man, what the heck is going on with licensed liquor establishments in the state of New Mexico?
Man, where do we start? We talk about legislation and the carry in regards to alcohol in New Mexico is just very, very confusing. And if you don't take the time and you read the statute, it can be interpreted incorrectly very quickly. So it's another one that's very important. This comes up pretty often. We see a lot of myths and a lot of decisions that people decide to twist and turn the law to benefit them. You've got to be careful because, as Jeremy started, this whole conversation is a felony. When you have a felony, most of the times, like for my job, you gain a felony, you don't have a job anymore. You lose your right to vote. You lose one of the biggest hobbies and the things that I love the most. You lose guns. You lose your right to self-defense, basically, with a firearm. A little unknown tidbit: if you're a felon, you cannot even have a piece of ammunition casing in your pocket, and that's considered a felon with a firearm. So those are the things you got to think about. So when we talk about alcohol, let's start with the basics. Okay, there's a bunch of signs out there, and we're not going to be able to explain all the signs, so we'll keep it simple. We have a generic no gun sign. Basically, that's any sign that says no firearms, no weapons, a picture of a gun with a circle and a line through it. That's a generic no gun sign. For all firearms people that carry, that means no go, right? You cannot go in there. And it depends. So if it's a place like, let's say it's a clothing store, if they have a generic no gun sign, petty misdemeanor. If it's a place that serves alcohol, whether it's you sit down and drink it, you take it home, or you go to your girlfriend's house, that turns into a felony immediately. So the other thing that's very easily misunderstood is open carrying. We have the right to open carry our firearm here in New Mexico. Great. If you choose to do that, that's an option. For me, I don't like the attention personally, but you cannot open carry into any location that has alcohol. Beer, wine, alcohol, does not matter. You cannot even walk into the gas station to pay for your gas and get a pack of bubble gum open carrying a firearm.
But wait, what if they only get 50% of their sales from alcohol?
See, there's the key.
Well, open carry doesn't matter, right?
In open carry, it doesn't matter. If they sell one beer a month, they still sell alcohol in that location. That's a 4th-degree felony. It also includes Sunday mornings when the gas stations don't sell beer until 10 or 11 a.m. Same thing, same issue. So, Jeremy, I'll let you move into it because you know this stuff very, very well. One of Jeremy's specialties is understanding the legalities and trying to interpret these laws as they're written. So, Jeremy, move on into the 30-7-3 sign, and then let's separate the actual 60/40 law that's out there that really confuses people.
Yeah, so some of y'all might have, we put up a short quiz a while ago, and one of the questions on there was kind of a trick question. It said something about, beer and wine only establishment that sold 50% alcohol. And what was amazing to me is more people that had their concealed carry license got that question wrong than students that didn't, right? And that's probably just a result how I worded the question. It was meant to be a little bit of a trick question. But 30-7-3, and if you guys go over to just open up another tab if you would like, and I want you to Google NM 30-7-3. That way you can stay with me on this. What I want you to do is I'm going to we'll read the statute, and then I'm just going to kind of break it down for you. So 30-7- I'm going to break it down, and then I'll read it to you. That way we can all get on the same page. And if you disagree with any of this stuff that I'm saying, feel free to fight me in the comments. But this is all very, well, not plainly written, but it's cleverly spelled out in legalese. Okay. So 30-7-3 basically says that it is illegal for any person to carry any firearm into any establishment that sells any alcohol, unless, and then it lists out some exceptions. So 30-7-3.A, unlawful carrying of a firearm in an establishment licensed to dispense alcoholic beverages consists of carrying a loaded or unloaded firearm on any premises licensed by the Regulation and Licensing Department for the dispensing of alcoholic beverages, except, okay? So when I paraphrase that to say it is illegal for anyone to carry any firearm into any establishment that sells any alcohol, that's basically what that says, okay? That's the layman terms for that, okay? The first exception is for a law enforcement officer in the lawful discharge of the officer's duties. The second one is by a law enforcement officer who is certified, yada, yada, yada. And then if we go down here to 4, it says by a person carrying a concealed handgun who is in possession of a valid concealed handgun license for that gun pursuant to the Concealed Handgun Carry Act on the premises of, okay, so let's break it back to the top. It is illegal for anyone to carry any firearm into any establishment that sells any alcohol except by a person who is in possession of a valid concealed carry license, and he's carrying on the premises of a licensed establishment that does not sell alcoholic beverages for consumption on the premises. So there you go. The only way you can legally carry a firearm into an establishment that sells alcohol for off-site consumption is if you have a concealed carry license. Can't open carrying it, 4th-degree felony. Or you're a person in possession of a valid concealed carry license, and it is a restaurant licensed to sell only beer and wine that derives no less than 60% of its annual gross receipts from the sale of food for consumption on the premises, unless the restaurant has a sign posted in a conspicuous location on each public entrance prohibiting the carrying of a firearm, or the person is verbally instructed by the owner or manager that the carrying of a firearm is not permitted in the restaurant. And there you have it, the most confusing statute that we have concerning where we can and cannot carry a firearm. Okay, it is illegal to carry any firearm in any establishment that sells any alcohol unless you have a concealed carry license and it's an off-site consumption establishment, or you're a person in possession of a concealed carry license and it's a restaurant that is licensed to dispense beer and wine only that gets no less than 60% of its annual gross receipts from the sale of food for consumption on the premises. It's important that we break this down a little bit. So it must be a restaurant that serves beer and wine only. If they serve hard alcohol, off limits, okay? And they must get 60% of their sales from the sale of food that is sold for consumption on site. This doesn't mean that if the establishment doesn't sell 40% in their sales from alcohol, what this means is 60% has to come from food consumed on site. Okay, and if you're in Los Alamos, right, they have a Smith's up there, fancy Smith's. They sell everything, man. They sell houses, mortgages, boats, everything you want. I think you can go in there and you can buy a puppy if you want. Okay, they also have a little sit-down eatery in there where you can sit down, you can have yourself a nice little sandwich, a nice little snack, kind of like what I think Whole Foods does now. But you can eat it there, and then you can also order yourself a beer or a glass of wine. So what does that mean? Right? Because at Smith's in Albuquerque, if they don't have a generic no gun sign posted, we can legally carry in there. But at Smith's up in Los Alamos, do they get to 60% of their sales from the sale of food consumed on site? And I would say no, right? Because if they sell $100,000, that means $60,000 has to come from food consumed on site. Groceries that are sold for off-site consumption don't count. Any of that other fancy stuff that they sell doesn't count to that 60%. So it's very unlikely that they get to 60% from food consumed on site. And if you lived in a state south of us, in Texas, for example, that has a similar law in place with licensed liquor establishments, they require establishments that don't meet their 50% sales requirement to post a sign on the door letting us responsible gun owners know that they get 50% of their sales from alcohol, or they don't get 50% for food. In New Mexico, there's no such requirement. So these restaurants that serve beer and wine only, they are not required to let you know if they get to 60% from the sale of food. So how do you know if you can legally carry your firearm into that establishment? If anybody knows, please put it in the comment section, because I've been doing this for over 6 years and I don't know. And that sucks as an instructor to say, because now we're in this safe assumptions zone when a 4th degree felony is on the line. So we could talk about this safe assumption where I can legally carry or where I can't legally carry. What I want you to do is I want you to look at those restaurants that serve beer and wine only. If it's a brewery or a winery, chances are they don't get to 60% from the sale of food consumed on site. And the reason is because they had the food on site, they have the on-site consumption alcohol that goes into their total sales, and then they also have the beer and the wine that they sell other establishments. Okay, so the beer and the wine that they sell other establishments, that still goes into their total sales calculation. Okay, so you have this bigger piece of the pie now that doesn't include food consumed on site. Okay, the way this law was written, I'm imagining it was written back in 2003 or so. And a lot has changed since then. You know, we have movie theaters popping up that serve beer and wine. Is that a restaurant that serves beer and wine only, or is it a movie theater? So where does that fall into the mix? So one of our goals this year through Practical Defense Training and the New Mexico Shooting Sports Association is to get some of this stuff kind of amended and changed, right? This thing should say if they want to, I get it. Guns and alcohol is scary. But I can go into a beer and wine only a restaurant that serves beer and wine only. I have a glass and a half of wine and forget it. I am wasted. Okay. Right. You give me like a Smirnoff Ice and a Zima, you know what I mean? Call it right for me. I'm done for the weekend. So it doesn't really matter. Right. And us, the responsible gun owners, aren't the ones that are going to go into that establishment, pound a few beers, and then shoot up the place. Okay. That's the concern that they have, and it's unreasonable concern. So if you have any questions on licensed liquor establishments, please get them going down there in the comments. If you think I'm wrong, please fight me in there. Somebody's selling about sell or serve. So New Mexico doesn't, what they say is for consumption, okay, or dispense. The term that they use is dispense. A licensed establishment that does not sell alcoholic beverages for consumption on the premises, and then derives no less. And a lot of people say, well, dispense. Listen, if you can open the beer and drink it on site, right, then it falls under this restaurant establishment. If you can't, if it's a grocery store where you go and you buy the alcohol, you take it home, you drink it with some buddies later, then it's an off-site consumption establishment. And then when we're talking about restaurants, I forget what the argument was, man, but there's an argument. And if you have that argument, please get it going in there, so that way I can rehash it. Hey, Tim, thanks for jumping on. I know you just moved down here. So man, our licensed liquor establishments, the easiest way to commit a 4th-degree felony in the state of New Mexico with a firearm. And then so Mike says APD said if he's asked to leave, then he has to leave the gas station. So Mike, I don't want to, our law enforcement officers do a great job for doing what they do. This part of the law is probably not covered in the academy. Okay. And I don't think it should be. The reason I don't think it should be is because in Albuquerque, we have much bigger fish to fry. But if you read the statute, the way the statute reads, plainly it says it's illegal to carry any firearm into any establishment that sells any alcohol unless you have a valid concealed carry license and it's an establishment for off-site consumption. Okay. But in there, it also says pursuant to the Concealed Handgun Carry Act. Okay. So, now let's talk about the likelihood of you going into the gas station, that guy calling the cops on you, the cops showing up, arresting you, prosecuting. It's little, but it does. What is it worth it? So the way the law reads is that it is a 4th-degree felony to open carry into an establishment that sells alcohol for off-site consumption. And it's silly. I am aware of at least one person that was facing the 4th-degree felony charge for this. Thankfully, that person was able to get an agreement with the DA that said, if you didn't get in any trouble for a year, then it would be like it never happened. With things kind of shifting the way that they've shifted up in Santa Fe with this last election, not to get political about it, but I would not believe it is going to become any easier or that things will be any more lenient on gun owners in the next coming years.
I agree with that too. The one thing with the APD deal with the police departments, as Jeremy said, we're 100% behind our police department. They're doing the job that they can do. But usually they're not dealing with law-abiding gun owners who have open carried a gun into a gas station. They're usually dealing with the heroin addict that just robbed somebody out in the parking lot. So as Jeremy said, I'd much rather them understand the law and know what they have to do to get these people off the streets, or should I say try to get these people off the streets, thanks to our judicial system, But I don't want to get involved. Again, is it one of those things that's worth it? And that for me, it's not. When you talk about, I see this argument a lot too. It's the same thing. Somebody will say, well, my brother's a police officer, or I know the police chief, and he says this. Well, you know what? I respect my police department officers, but you know what? This law, out of all the laws that are there, I would expect them to not understand this law and dig into it deeper. I would not be upset with any police officer that does not know this law well. Should they know them all? Sure, but we're not robots, or they're not robots, not me. So we've got to understand that part too. There was a shooting here. It's been 6 months ago at a Circle K. A female was in there open carrying her firearm. The guy went in to rob the store. She pulled a gun on him. No charges were filed on her. So that directly is opposite of what we just told you right now. The lady was open carrying a firearm. She used her firearm in self-defense of the robbery, and she was not charged. You know what? Awesome. I'm glad she wasn't. But could she have been? Absolutely, she could have been there. And again, let's say she goes through the plea deal and she goes through all that. Not worth it for me. I'd rather follow the law. The chances of us needing a firearm for self-defense, let's be real, it's very small. Very, very small. But it's also a very small chance that I'm going to get a flat tire, but I got a spare tire in my truck, right? And that's the things we've got to think of. We've got to weigh that risk versus reward. Another thing I see pretty often from gun owners is, well, if they don't allow firearms, I'm not going. Okay. It's kind of like the boycott thought. Well, I'm not going to go to the state fair. I'm not going to go to the balloon fiesta. I'm not going to go to a restaurant. You know what? That's fine. That's a choice we all get to make as adults, right? Beauty of being an American. But here's the reality for me. What's the definition of terrorism? Not being able to do things because you're afraid of something bad happening to you, right? It's kind of along those lines for me. I have a life. My wife loves Costco and Whole Foods. If she wants to go to Costco and Whole Foods, guess what? I'm going to go with her. Am I going to be more on my toes and kind of more paying attention with my surroundings? Absolutely, I am. But I'm also not going to break the law. And again, personal opinions. Jeremy and I are here just to explain the laws, how they're written, and how we feel they're interpreted. And then you're welcome to make the decisions at your own. So Kara has a question on the Facebook post here. It says, any chance the law will ever change? Carrying in a restaurant that sells liquor to make it easier to understand. It seems ridiculous that we are supposed to calculate sales. It's way too confusing and convoluted. Jeremy, what do you think? Think we're going to change that?
I agree with her. It is I'm not a mathematician. I'm a problem solver, but I'm not a mathematician. That's one of my goals for this year in this next legislative session. Now, will it happen? I don't know. It's going to be, there are some Democrats up there that are 2A friendly, and I'm going to reach out to some people that were instrumental in the big universal background check push a couple years ago and see about getting a bill introduced that would amend the statute, because we're not going to go from 30-7-3 to nothing. Okay. I don't think it's reasonable to believe that in the gun climate that we're in, the political gun climate that we're in, that we would get anything passed that says that gets rid of licensed liquor establishments as it pertains to unlawful carrying of a firearm. The way that I think it should be written, if we have to have this on there, the next best thing would be, it's illegal for any person to carry any firearm in any establishment that sells any alcohol, except for a person in possession of a valid concealed carry license. Okay. And then we don't have to worry about sales mixes. Do they sell hard alcohol? Is it off-site consumption or on-site consumption? Okay. I think that's our best hope as gun owners. And then that's the goal, that one of my goals this year is get that bill introduced and see if we can get some movement in there in our direction. We'll see. I'm somewhat optimistic about it because I don't think it's a huge thing. I don't think somebody could say we're going to have shootouts in bars. I don't think that's going to be the case. But so we'll see. Hopefully it happens.
It's going to be a tough sell for sure.
Hey, Mike says the chance you need to go goes down if you open carry. The bad guy will not follow me in the parking lot. I don't want to go into the open carry versus concealed carry, but Mike, do me a favor, open up a new tab, get into Facebook, and then I want you to follow William April. Okay, William April. He does a seminar that we'll probably host with Scott Mitchell down here on the, what does he call? He calls it his Unthinkable Seminar, and he goes into the mind of the violent criminal actor and target selection, victim selection, all this and the other stuff. But one of the things that he has done is he has started to track how many how many victims were targeted for their firearm that was openly carried or was obviously obvious that they had a firearm on them. And I think you would be surprised by what he has found. At the seminar that he did here last year, he said there were close to 10 or a dozen or so cases just in Louisiana alone, where he's in Louisiana. So he tracks them there, but close to a dozen where the victim was specifically chosen because they had a firearm on him. Okay. Now the random attack, if somebody's looking to hold a guy up at an ATM, probably not going to choose the guy that's open carrying. But if it's a criminal that wants to obtain a firearm, say he's just broken into 3 cars and he hasn't found a firearm left unsecured in that vehicle, his next best option might be the guy that's open carrying and try to ambush that person. Okay. So it would be a different level of attack. I completely agree with you there. You know, if somebody sees me and then they see, if you and I are together and you're open carrying and they're going to attack me and you're going to also be attacked by that guy, and it's parallel universes, how I'm attacked would be different than how you're attacked. Okay. But follow William April, because he's actually compiled cases where people have been victimized because they were openly carrying. So check that out for more information on there. Again, if you're open carrying and you do it in a responsible manner, you understand the risks that are associated with that, more power to you. Okay. Be safe. That's hey, make well-informed decisions, and it's your life, man. You're doing what you want to do. I'm not going to knock it, dude. You're a gun owner. If you want to open carry, that's great. I'd rather you open carry than not carry at all.
Yeah. I got a question. I got a private message question from Virginia. So Virginia, thanks for listening. And this should be an easy one for us, Jeremy. Hi, I just have a question. Where in Albuquerque can I take a class for carrying a gun? So let's talk about registration carrying a gun versus concealed carry really quickly, and let them know where they can come take a concealed carry course. And then she was also asking for cost.
Cool. So unlike Texas, if you want to open carry in New Mexico, you can open carry. You don't need any license. You don't need to register. You don't need to go through any formal training. In Texas, you have to take it's their license to carry class. So you have to take a course in Texas if you want to open carry or concealed carry. If you're in Albuquerque, we'd absolutely recommend practical defense training. Andy and myself run practical defense training. Our next course is this weekend, December 1st and 2nd, and then we'll have the courses for the first quarter of 2019 getting posted to the calendar in the next week or two. We typically charge $145, but through ABQ Metro, we have a promo code set up for you guys. That'll be ABQ Metro, and that'll get you $25 off the course. It is ABQ Metro. Let me write that down, because I'll go in here and I'll check afterwards and make sure that that code is correct and I didn't change it. So that'll get you $30 off the course. That'll drop it down to $115. After you take the concealed carry course, you'll have to get your fingerprints done, which are going to run you $44. That's through Cogent ID. Andy and I don't make a penny off of that. That's a completely separate company. The state makes some money on it, but we do not. And then you'll need to pay a $56 application fee to the state of New Mexico. So it'll be $100 in addition to any concealed carry course that you take. If you're out there Googling it around, we are not the cheapest course in town. We're not the cheapest course in New Mexico. We tend to be on the higher middle end of it. And there are other instructors out there where you can train for. You can save a few bucks. If you would like to know who we'd recommend, some people that I'd feel confident sending my friends and family to, Dale Perkins is a guy that's been doing it for a long time. I'd feel comfortable with sending my friends down there to train with Dale Perkins. Anthony Landavazo over at Clearsight Tactical is a buddy of mine. He has the, him and I our opinions and perspective on some firearms related training stuff are closely related. So I'd recommend him. Q Pro Defense, those guys run a day 2 is entirely on the range. So if you want to spend 8 hours on the range instead of our 3 hours, those guys, I believe, I haven't taken their course, but I've heard some good things about them. They're going to give you more of a tactical hands-on approach to it, whereas we're focusing on taking a shooter, a newer shooter, getting them comfortable and confident using their handgun in the context of a defensive shooting. There's a couple other people I don't want to upset that I've probably forgot to mention. Scott Mitchell, man, he was at the top of my list all the time. Provident Personal Protection. If he's ever running a course, I'd recommend you train with him. He also does some unarmed stuff, Krav Maga. He's trained with Craig Douglas when he's in town. When you're calling around looking for an instructor, one of the couple questions that I always like to have students ask them what's their medical brief, or do you have a medical brief that you cover on the range? And what you're looking for there is that they have an actual plan if the worst case scenario happens. If you're taking a class and they do not have a medical brief, a medical discussion on what happens, and they do not have a trauma first aid kit, it would not be a bad idea to leave that range. The reason I say that is because we're dealing with firearms and accidents happen. Okay. Whether it's a ricochet coming in from another range, a ricochet off of some steel, a negligent discharge. If they do not have a medical brief, I would be surprised if they were not lacking in other safety measures. Okay. Andy and I, I'm very proud of the range that we run, and where I do get kind of boastful is, I talk about our range day. I think we do have a very good range day. Kara, you've been out there on there. So if you want to you've taken our class, you've been on the range. I don't mean to put you on the spot there, but if you disagree with that, feel free to let me know in the comment section. But I think we do run a really good and safe range. We have a range safety brief that takes about 15-20 minutes to get out there. Andy brings out a trauma first aid kit. I bring out a trauma first aid kit. And then we have also taken courses to apply those tools. If somebody has a negligent discharge for whatever reason, and shoots themselves, we've received training that would allow us to render emergency medical first aid under those circumstances. And we've taken a 2-day course and then a 1-day course several times with the instructor. We found that training to be so beneficial that we now host that course down here in Albuquerque at least once a year. So check and see, hey man, what's your medical brief look like? And he's like, what are you talking about? Or ask him what he has in his first aid kit. And if it's Band-Aids and antiseptic wet, yeah, that's good for the range for slide bite and boo-boos. But if he doesn't have tourniquet, some quick clot and stuff in there, he probably doesn't. There are probably going to be some safety issues. And then,
go ahead.
And then I was going to say the other question is ask him what other instructors he recommends, right? If you call us up and you say, hey man, I'm interested in your course, I haven't made a decision. What are some other courses that you recommend, or what are some other instructors that you recommend? I'll tell you. I mean, we just told everybody that's watching right now, and then anybody who watches this video later, we just named some of our direct competitors. And there might be some folks that decide to go and train with one of those guys instead of us. Hey, I know if you go train with one of those folks instead of us, you'll still receive quality training. Okay. So if they're not comfortable doing that, give me a call and I'll be happy to send you to somebody else. If you don't want to train with a ginger or a bald guy, man,
you're stuck.
Yeah.
To tag on to that whole medical deal, and it's something very important that Jeremy said, and I'm glad he covered it. They may have a what they call a blowout kit or an IFAC kit out there. Do they know how to use it? All of our instructors, so Jeremy and I, basically we hit up Practical Defense. We have additional instructors. We have Mary, we have Scott, we have Jose, we have Ben. We have a bunch of different instructors that also, each and every one of them have also taken a medical course. And we feel it's at the utmost important that if there is that very, 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 very slight chance that something happens, we know what to do, and we know how to do everything we can do to stop a bleed or protect our students. So that's very important. Christina in the Facebook chat has a question. If someone is still not comfortable after the 3 hours on the range, do you work with them more on a one-on-one manner? So we do a couple cool things with that. So first of all, when we're out on the range, we have to do a qualification. Then we do some different drills to get your fundamentals on point. Fundamentals are very important. Jeremy and I have been to a bunch of higher end classes, and the first thing you work on is fundamentals. After fundamentals, we actually break the group up separately. We do half of the students, or however many. Anybody would like some more one-on-one training on your fundamentals, because sometimes we do have new students. We have students that often will walk in with a gun in a box and say, teach me how to shoot this. And then we also have guys that shoot as well as us, if not better. They really are not interested in getting one-on-one fundamental training. They're there to shoot. They're there to check the box to get their concealed carry permits. And they don't have the need for that. So we absolutely do that. We'll give you one-on-one training. Beyond that, with Practical Defense, if you come to our course, you can come out to any one of our range days from here on out, and the only thing you're going to pay is whatever it costs the fee of the range. We usually use 2 ranges, the Albuquerque City range out on the west side by Double Eagle Airport. That's going to cost you $6 to come out and shoot with us, and you'll get treated exactly like everybody else who's in that class. You'll get the same instruction. And then we use Founders Ranch out in Edgewood on occasion, and that's basically Kara asked why we go out there. It's based on availability. So that's generally what we do. Jeremy and I are available by text, private message. I'm not going to say 24/7, but we're pretty available to get you some answers, even if you have more questions in the future. So yeah, we definitely have a bunch of different options for you. One more thing that I wanted to cover when we talk about firearms in the vehicles and with alcohol, and what happens if, let's say, for example, Andy and his wife have date night. We're both concealed carrying. We decide we're going to go to Texas Roadhouse and eat there. And of course, they serve hard liquor for on-site consumption. What do I do with my gun, Jeremy? What do I do with that thing?
You tuck it under your seat, and then you become a statistic, and then you become a victim of auto theft or auto burglary, and you have your firearm stolen. Andy says if you can afford a gun, you can afford a safe. You get a $20 safe that you can secure to your vehicle that will take the bad guy longer to get to your gun or remove the safe from your vehicle than they want to be inside of your vehicle. We're talking about securing your firearms. They need to be secured so unauthorized persons cannot gain access to them. But they also need to be accessible to you, right? So inside of your home in the middle of the night, you need to be able to get your firearm before the bad guy can get to you, okay? Inside of your vehicle, if you're leaving it in your vehicle to go in and have dinner somewhere, it should be secured in such a manner that it will take the bad guy who's breaking into your vehicle longer to get that gun than he wants to be inside of your vehicle or can be inside of your vehicle, okay? Couple ways you can do that. For me, I have a couple kiddos. If I'm ever going into a place where I would be committing a 4th-degree felony if I carried my firearm, one of the options that I like to do is I'll unload the firearm. I take the slide off because it's M&P, super easy to break down. I take the slide off. I put the slide in a separate part in the diaper bag or whatever bag that I'm carrying. And then I leave the frame. I'll secure the frame with one of those cable locks that you get with guns, one of the cheap cable locks. I'll just secure that to an anchor point in my vehicle, right? Typically under the seat, right? Because if you get out and you're doing stuff in your belt line and putting stuff in your trunk, bad guy sees that, he's going to go pop your trunk, and leaving your firearm in a locked trunk is not securing it, okay? Because they can break into your side, pop your trunk, get it, right? But what that does for me is the frame is a serialized part, so they have still stolen a firearm per federal law, right? And then they cannot take that gun and walk into a gas station and shoot the clerk for $20. right? Another option for you is they have some quick access safes designed for your vehicle that you permanently attach, or you're semi-permanently attached to either your center console or the floorboard of your truck, your vehicle, or underneath the seat or inside of your trunk. But buy the $20 safe and secure it in there, okay? That way you're not forced with committing a 4th-degree felony or possibly getting your firearms stolen. So your firearms need to be secured so that unauthorized persons cannot gain access to them. I think, what was this statistic? 1,100 firearms stolen last year or something crazy, or this year only?
Yeah, so it was 1,100 firearms stolen, and that stat was probably 4 months ago. So I mean, we can be safe to say it's probably double by now, and that's a scary thing. Again, as a responsible gun owner, here we go again with another thing. When we talk about this on Facebook, some people say, "Why are you victim blaming?" You know what? I should have a right. My vehicle is locked. They should not have access to my firearms because my vehicle's locked. I'll ask you the same question. Do you lock your house when you leave? Do you lock your doors at night? It's a matter of responsibility. We're not blaming victims for getting their firearms stolen. If this was 1950, we'd probably be having a whole little different conversation, because nobody left people would leave their keys in their car when they'd run inside the post office to mail their letter to somebody, right? We can't do that anymore. So it's just a matter of personal responsibility.
Yeah. So if you carry a gun, it's your responsibility to secure it. I went back and forth with some people on this before. They said, it's not it's your victim blaming. No, you're a gun owner. You have responsibilities with it. Okay. Just because it's a Second Amendment, it's a constitutional issue, doesn't mean that you just be willy-nilly with it, man. There are people out there that we do not want to have firearms. And there are a lot of those people in the state of New Mexico. Those are typically the people looking for NRA stickers and Glock stickers on the vehicle in the restaurant parking lot, that they're trying to break into those cars and get those guns. Don't let your gun. It shouldn't be easy to get your stuff. Okay. And then I meant to touch on there's a question about, I think it was Christina that was asking about the 3 hours on the range. Do we work with them? Did you mention Andy's Guarantee?
I did not, actually.
Yeah, so we have Andy's Guarantee. It's the only place in town with Andy's Guarantee that I know of. If I'm wrong, let me know. But the Andy's Guarantee is, if you take our class and you do not pass the New Mexico qualification shoot for your concealed carry license, we will refund you your money. You won't get the certificate because you have to pass that qualification. But if we are not able to get you coached up to the level that the state has set to obtain your New Mexico concealed carry license, we'll issue you a refund. And then we'll also work with you on getting there. All right. It's our goal. It's our job to make sure that you're able to pass that qualification and then really go beyond on that level of training.
Hey, Jeremy, how many refunds have we given so far?
None, not for that. You know what I mean? I had a lady sign up for our online class that didn't mean to, so I refunded her money. I've had a couple of Andy's Guarantee,
none. And to add a little bit more to that, so just because we give Andy's Guarantee that you're going to pass this class, we will not pass you if we don't feel that you're safe and you are a fundamentally good and responsible gun owner, plain and simple. I'd rather us give you your $100+ back and say, you know what, thank you for coming and training with us, than I would saying, you know what, we can't have any refunds here. We're just going to make sure you pass anyway. That's not how it works. And I want to be clear about that.
Yeah. On that, we don't issue refunds if you fail the course for reasons other than us not being able to get you competent with the handgun. Right. So if you're not paying attention and you're just trying to fly through the class and sleep through the class or whatever, we have no problem not issuing you a concealed carry or a certificate of completion. And you might say, well, it's the Second Amendment. Every student that we issue a certificate to, we share liability with the decisions that they make. Okay. One of our students is involved in a self-defense shooting. It's likely that what we taught in that class and how we taught it will be brought into court and into that trial. Right. So if you're in there trying to ask me how you get better at doing drive-by shootings or robbing little old ladies at the ATM, we won't issue your certificate. We'll probably ask you to leave class. And depending on how bad of a person we think we are, we might have the cops show up to leave you, take you out of there. But the good thing about being, earlier we mentioned our price point. Kara, I'm going to get to the question that you just asked in just a moment. When we were talking about the price point, what that price point is when I first started doing the class way back, and I think it might have been in Andy's class, it was just moving up to that higher price point. It feels like students value the training a little bit more, and they're more committed to the training at that higher price point. So if you look at, and I use the cheeseburger analogy. If you go to McDonald's and you buy a double cheeseburger for $1 and it's worth 50 cents, you don't say anything. You're like, I paid $1 for a burger. Of course it's going to be crap. At the same time, you're not expecting much out of it, so you're probably not putting a whole lot into it. Now, if you go to some burger place and you pay $20 for a burger, and that burger is worth only $20, you're probably going to be a little bit upset. You're going to say, "Wait a second, man, why was this burger $20? Like, it wasn't worth it, right?" So you're going to be committed to that a little bit more, and then you're also going to have a higher standards for the level of instruction that you receive. We have the best students. That's one thing I can say, like going back to this, it should be a category like, firearms courses with the best students, with the best alumni. It'd be practical defense all day, all day, because we do have the best students. Kara was asking about any chance to train from a position on your back as if you were knocked down. So unconventional shooting positions, how to access your firearm and get back up to your feet. That is, we do work unconventional shooting positions in our defensive handgun clinics. So we haven't worked the unconventional shooting positions in any of the ones that you've attended so far, but we are going to do holster work in this next one. Talk to Andy about it. That's something that you said that you wanted to work on. So we're definitely going to do the holster work in this next, the defensive handgun clinic on the 9th. And depending on how many students show up for that, we may work unconventional shooting positions from that. There are, and what we'll do is we'll start that off with the, mindset discussion, in what situations would I be on my back, with a handgun, and using that, how do I present the holster from an unconventional shooting position? And then, we had a student, there's a video going around last year of a course. It was like a $500 class. And there was a gentleman in a wheelchair, and they were pushing him over, there was all kinds of shotgun shell cases on this range, and he's shooting, and there are other students in front of him on the line, in front of him, but like not directly in front of him, but they're like 7 yards down range of him. And everybody was like, "That's not safe. That's not safe." And I was like, it's not practical. Like, if you're in a gunfight in a wheelchair, you're not moving, right? You're not, and it's not saying, hey, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't move. But if you're in a wheelchair and you use your hands how are you moving if you're in a gunfight? Like if you're in a gunfight, you're not moving. And that's what I was like, man, everybody's talking about how unsafe it is. I'm like, that's not practical. Like, that's not practical. So everything that we do, we relate it back to, the practical application of it, what it would look like, and really getting some reps in that unconventional shooting position, and what situation you might find yourself in that would require you to present your handgun or engage a target from your back or your side. So yeah, that is something that we do work with in the 3-hour format. So our defensive handgun clinics, for those of y'all that don't know, it's a 3-hour clinic. And what we did is we looked at the training you would receive, or the topics that you would receive, and the skills that you would work on over an 8-hour or a 2-day defensive pistol course, right? So you'd probably do use of cover, presenting the handgun from the holster, shooting on the move, and the higher level stuff, getting out of your vehicle, or if the fight starts and you're inside your vehicle, multiple targets, threat recognition and acquisition. So determining what's a shoot threat and a no shoot threat, So we looked at those skill sets that would typically provided in an 8-hour or 16-hour course. And one of the things that we said is, man, like use of cover, that's 3 hours. That's a 3-hour block. Shooting on the move, that's at least a 3-hour block. So in an 8-hour class, how are these other things being trained? You know, like if you look at each one of those things where you could really spend an 8-hour day on use of cover. So what we said is, hey, let's do a 3-hour block. Let's do 3-hour clinics where it's not requiring somebody to commit an entire Saturday or an entire Sunday away from their family and their life. Let's break it down into 3-hour blocks, and then let's build upon those individual blocks. So, for some of our students, one of them is in our, in the comment section here, that student will, when we did the one-handed stuff, shooting dominant hand only and non-dominant hand only, then once we get the use of cover down, then that student who's taken the one-handed clinic, right, now works the use of cover with the dominant hand only or the non-dominant hand only to reinforce those skills and to really to build upon those tasks so they can really work on and have a solid baseline understanding of how to use cover, of how to engage a threat with one hand or with their offhand. So if that makes sense,
I gotta say a big shout out to Kara. So Kara in the comments here, she's taken our concealed carry course as well as her husband came out on, I believe, 1 or 2 of them. During Kara's first course, she got stung by a bee in the hand, and she decided still shoot and continue. She's been to, I think, 3 or 4 of our defensive pistol classes. So when Jeremy talked about earlier, if we could choose the best student base for ABQ the Mag, we'd have to nominate, probably Kara would be in the top running of the top 5 there, because we just really appreciate that. So thank you for that. As myself, I always like to say we're always students. We learn from our students as well. While we're out there teaching you the things we know, we also learn from you too. So thank you.
Yeah. Kara recommends a Hornady Rapid Safe cable to the vehicle seat for securing your vehicle or securing your firearm inside your vehicle. Hornady makes some great safes. So check those guys out. If you guys have any other, I think we're going to, we've been on here, Andy and I said, it'll probably be a short one, half hour, 30 minutes or so. And here we are about an hour and a half into it. So we'd love to give you guys the rest of your evening back. If you ever have any questions, man, you shoot an email to jeremy@abqconcealedcarry.com or andy@abqconcealedcarry.com. The website's abqconcealedcarry.com. My personal number is 505-944-5247. So if you have a question, you want to shoot a text message or a phone call over, feel free to use that. If you go to our website, there's a chat feature on there that pings directly to my cell phone. So we try to be as accessible as possible for our students and anybody else that really has a question. So if you have a question, I don't care who you trained with, we still offer the concealed carry retraining. So if you've received your concealed carry license within the last 12 months and you were not happy with the level of, I don't even know why we put the 12 months on there, right? If you have your concealed carry license and you weren't happy with the level of information that you received, or you need to hear it again or learn it again, get a different perspective on it. If you have a concealed carry license, you can audit our concealed carry course, our in-person concealed carry course. We won't charge anything other than the range fee if you want to shoot with us, right? City range, $6, Foundry Ranch, 10. Okay. So if you just feel like you need to take that concealed carry course again for whatever reason, you can come in and take our class. We won't charge you a penny for it. So we used to put a 12-month period on there. You will be auditing the course, so you won't receive a certificate of completion, but you'll still get the knowledge and the information. So feel free to take us up on that if you would like to. Our next concealed carry course is December 1st and 2nd. Coupon code ABQ Metro will get you $30 off of that course. We have an online concealed carry course that allows you to complete 12 of the 15 hours online, and then complete a short 3-hour range day. If you think that is going to be a cakewalk of an online course, please take it and then leave us a review that says you were wrong. Those are my favorite reviews to get from the online course. Is like, man, I had my concealed carry license in Texas, and I took this course because I thought I knew everything I needed to know, and it was just going to be a breeze. But boy, was I wrong. That course is similar to what you would expect to receive from an entry-level online college course. Online, it's comprised of video lectures, forum discussions, some quizzes, and assignments. We'd love to have you in class. We'd love to train with you. We'll be doing a couple free seminars coming up. We're looking at doing a free concealed carry Q&A discussion in the next couple months. So abqconcealedcarry.com is where to find us. Practical defense training, Albuquerque Metro Crime Watch. This is a great, I love seeing the content and the information that's shared in this group. This is the second time that Andy and I have come into the Metro Crime Watch page. I think, or the group. I think the other one was, we went into the other one. Is that correct, Andy?
Yeah, there's another one, Albuquerque Metro. I believe it's stolen vehicles, something to that name.
So it's really good, man. Check out the there's an app out there. What is it? Is it crimewatch.com or something like that? What's the one that tells you how bad where you live is?
Crimemapping.com, I believe it is.
Crimemapping.com. Check that out. That'll let you know what's going on in your crime. If you're interested in the Ring app, Andy has a promo code that'll hook you up with something. I believe it'll get you $10 off if you use his link to that. That's a cool app and a cool thing to get. I saw something. I was just browsing the app the other day, and I saw some guy on there. Somebody was breaking into the car, and I think it was the Floodlight app or the Floodlight. And then you just heard the dude, hey, get out of my car. And the dude looked up, jumped in his little rice burner, and took off. So just, man, pay attention to what's going on around you. Know the crime that's happening in your neighborhood. Talk to your neighbors. Let them know that you're there for them and they're there for you. That way, if 2 doors down from you, somebody had their house broken into, they'll let you know. Andy, final thoughts, man.
Just again, I want to thank everybody for taking their time out. We've have some live listeners here. Feel free to share this out. It's truly Jeremy and I's passion that we get the right information out to everybody that's out there. So thank you for sitting here listening to us ramble, because we're good at that. We could, as we said, Jeremy and I talked. We said, let's do 30 minutes or so. We're an hour and a half in, and if we wanted to, we could do this another hour and a half very easily, just because there's so much information. But thanks for taking the time. Come check us out at Practical Defense Training on Facebook as well. And we're hoping to see you out there in class or on the range.
Yeah. Remember, guys, it's your life. It's your safety and protection. It's your responsibility. Stay safe and reach out to us if you need to.